Okay, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and just want to introduce myself and the other folks from Axel on the call. My name's Sam Bogosh, and Patrice Gutebel is also on the call, the product manager for Axel, as well as Neil Blake, who handles our European business development. So this is scheduled for 90 minutes for the call. We're going to try and spend at least a half hour on question and answers at the end of the call, but we can also take questions during the presentation. So in general, I'll be starting with a brief PowerPoint, and then we'll be launching into Patrice's demonstration of the product in its current form. And again, we can take questions either during that time or afterwards. Please use the question panel on the right on your GoToWebinar control panel. It's down towards the bottom of the list, and you can basically put questions in there, and we'll be watching that starting at around the 10-minute point of the presentation. So thanks everyone for attending. It's a very good turnout. Let me just launch right in, if I could, to talking about our product and our company. So Axel is a fairly new company, and we are trying to make media management radically simple. What does that mean? What it means is that traditionally, media asset management systems have been designed for fairly complex deployments and have had a lot of rules and very specific workflows associated with them. They've also been fairly expensive, and we're trying to really change that and come up with a way for people to get a lot of the benefits of media management without a lot of the expense and complexity. The background for this is that the use of storage in the media industries is growing very rapidly. As this chart from Coughlin Associates shows, the growth is accelerating, and in fact, the number of petabytes being added to the new storage each year is approaching 1,000 petabytes. So, for instance, this year there are about 2,500 new petabytes being installed, and that is already about 500 petabytes more than last year. And that again, that trend is accelerating. So by the year 2015, that's projected to be about 4,000 new petabytes in addition to everything that's previously installed. Now, overwhelmingly, the storage that is being used is unmanaged storage. So I'd say over 95% of that storage is either shared storage with no kind of software management to it, or local storage connected directly to editing workstations or to field acquisition systems. So in general, a whole lot more storage is unmanaged than is managed. And there have been some exceptions to that. There are some very successful software products that do try and provide searchability and review, streaming proxies, things like that. But these systems have been aimed at only the largest broadcasters and content producers. In fact, it's a pretty big industry, about $100 million a year, growing at 20 or 30% per year. It's just that the systems, as I say, have been for the bigger guys. Things like Avid Interplay, which I'm very familiar with, and so is Neil. We both were at Avid for a number of years. Delete, CatDV, these kinds of systems are multi-module, fairly intense deployments, and there's a lot of training of the users because you have to stop doing what you've been doing in terms of your editing workflows and take up what's typically called a check-in, check-out workflow, along with a bunch of associated necessary steps. There are also starting to be some cloud solutions for this, things like Media Silo, A-Frame, and WireDrive. But what they do is typically operate away from where the production storage is located. So you can do some very cool things in the cloud here, but what you can't do is hook right up to your live work in progress, which is usually on a SAN or high-speed NAS within the production facility. Obviously, the limitations of network bandwidth and cost means that it's almost impossible today to synchronize that local storage with remote storage in the cloud. And as a result, these kinds of applications are used very heavily for distributed use and for review and approval of low resolution material, but not as much for the actual intense HD production work. Just briefly going through the market segments. At the high end, you've got these sort of enterprise systems, the very biggest broadcasters, and there's only a few dozen of those that are sold each year. These systems cost, just for the software and for installation, $1 million and up. There are also departmental systems, and these are less expensive, typically $100,000 to $1 million. There are a few hundred of those sold each year. And again, it's mostly in big broadcasters. In the last few years, there's been more and more in terms of work group activity. So these are, say, $10,000 to $100,000 systems. There's probably 2,000 of those installed every year, something like that. And even they are still almost as complex as their bigger brothers. It's not like the systems get that much simpler as they get less expensive. So you have similar levels of complexity at decreasing levels of cost. What we're trying to do is really bring media asset management to the small team, to people that can afford to spend between $1,000 and $10,000 on a system. And there's a whole lot more of those people. There's probably low tens of thousands per year. The reason we know these numbers to some degree is that there was a system that catered to these folks, and it was called Final Cut Server. It was canceled almost 2 years ago, but they did sell tens of thousands of copies of it. And for us, it's kind of a role model for what we could be doing with Axle. It essentially proved that there was a market for this sort of thing. Now, it was based on a piece of software called Proximity that was in the same class as the Cat DVs and the Interplays, had a lot of modules, had a lot of customization required. So the real cost was a far cry from $995. But it got us thinking, what would it be like if we could build a product that was really easy to install and actually made sense at that kind of price point? Could we, in fact, create a kind of revolution in the industry where a lot more people could use media management? So our objective with Axle is really radical simplicity. We have to make the product so easy to install and to use that people can just basically bring it up and start running it in an afternoon. For that to happen, several things had to be pretty different from traditional media asset management. The user interface had to be very, very modern, very clean, very kind of iPad-like. It needs to run on a variety of web browsers. We felt very strongly that if you make people install software and update the software on each of the workstations, that you're adding a lot of complexity to the system and making the deployments much more difficult. We thought it was important that it support both local and cloud backends so that you can log in locally or remotely. And basically you have to be able to use it straight out of the box. You shouldn't have to, go through a manual just to become a typical user of the product. Finally, we really wanted it to be integrated with a lot of interesting third parties. The industry has become very diverse, and there are tremendous companies doing things like transcoding, ingest, storage, archiving. We wanted to be able to connect to as many of these as possible. So this is what the front end looks like. I won't spend very long on this slide because Patrice will be doing an in-depth demo. The important point is that the user interface supports Safari, Internet Explorer, Chrome, and Firefox. And as I mentioned, it already supports iOS browsers. In fact, this is the view on the iPad. It's very similar to what it looks like on desktop browsers. The difference is that we've kind of streamlined it a bit, gotten rid of the left column, which comes out in a pull-out panel. But Axle is really built for access from iPads and from a lot of the mobile lightweight devices that are coming over the next few years. That doesn't mean you can't use it from desktops. It's even more powerful in a desktop view. But it's our sense that particularly for review and approval applications, people want things to be easy and sort of come to them wherever they are. Another really big difference between Axle and traditional asset management systems is the way you install it and use it. So traditionally, these systems have kind of sat between the editing workstations and the storage. Instead of just reading and writing to your storage and having your file system the way you know it, they set up this layer where you have to check things in. And then the asset management system worries about where it's stored. The problem with that is that it involves pretty significant retraining of how people work. It also means that whatever you're used to doing in your storage, you now have to do something slightly different. And it makes it more difficult, for instance, to bring in freelancers or people that are not familiar with your system because they've got to be retrained. It also makes it more difficult on the vendor because any downtime in the asset management system is essentially downtime for the whole facility. So the media asset management systems are mission critical because of where they sit in the workflow. What we wanted to do is something much more lightweight. So essentially, our software talks from the edges of your network as if it was a workstation, and it watches the storage while you're working on it. It doesn't dictate how you use that storage. So if you have a folder system that you're comfortable with, if you have a way of organizing multiple tiers of storage that you're comfortable with, typically Axle is going to sit on top of those and not demand that you do something different. It then pushes out the browser interface to your editing clients and to your desktops wherever they are, but it also can push that same interface or flavors of it out to mobile devices. And so we're shipping the iPad interface today, and we're in development on an iPhone interface and Android. The hardware is also pretty lightweight compared to what a traditional asset management system would be, but still very powerful. So we're using Mac Minis as our back ends. The new ones use quad-core Intel i7 CPUs. You can configure them with up to 16 gigabytes of RAM. We recommend 8 is fine. They use this Fusion solid state and hard disk drive. And they have things like gigabit Ethernet out the back and also Thunderbolt, so that if you have a SAN, for instance, with a fiber channel, you can connect to it through the Thunderbolt adapter. Pricing is also very reasonable compared to what people are used to spending for high-end asset management systems. A 5-user system of Axle is $1,295, and each additional 5 users cost the same amount. Annual support is $295 a year for each block of 5. And we've just come out with an XML import-export utility that costs $500, which is used for either migrating data from older systems like Final Cut Server or for maintaining a loose synchronization with cloud systems. We can answer questions about that later. It's not something that makes for a great demo, but essentially you can import and export metadata from a variety of systems using XML translators. Finally, there's a module that we recommend highly, which is Telestream Episode Pro. So we have a very good relationship with Telestream, and we're able to license Episode Pro along with Axle. The advantages that it brings are essentially the ability to transcode a much wider range of incoming formats. So Axle automatically will transcode whatever it finds in your file system, and it handles most of the mainstream video formats. But when you add Episode Pro, you get many more formats, including things like DNX HD, some of the higher-end ProRes formats, and a number of AVCI and DVC Pro formats that go well beyond what the built-in transcoder in Axle is able to do. It also gives you the ability to transcode out to a variety of formats. So you can create, for instance, custom exports, export for iTunes, export for YouTube, things like that, as well as broadcast formats like OP1A. So that Episode Pro module adds a lot to the system. And then the Mac Minis are still very powerful, but are affordable and compact. We've just announced a new kind of packaging of this, which we call Axle Gear. And this is a 1U appliance. It just fits in a standard rack, but it includes pretty much everything we have to offer. 2 Mac Minis, one of them is running Axle, the other one is running Episode Pro, and they work closely together, so you essentially have a coupling of the 2 systems. You have a 5-user license with a year of support, Episode Pro with a year of support, and it's pre-configured so that one of our dealers can come in and install it for you, typically in the space of a couple of hours, and connect it up to your storage. So very straightforward to use and kind of one price, $7,000. Finally, I'd just like to wrap up by talking about the NAB show, which is coming up in just a couple of weeks here. We're going to be in the South Hall, and we'd love for anybody who's on this call, as well as folks you know, to come visit us. It's looking like it's going to be a very exciting show for us, as we're going to be, it's our NAB debut, and we're going to be rolling out the Axle Gear product in the public for the first time. We also are lucky enough to have over a dozen partner vendors that will be demoing and talking about our software in their booths. Many of these are storage companies. So you see people like Facilis, for instance, Zendata, EMC Isilon. You know, these guys have very powerful storage systems that are complemented by our ability to catalog and collaborate around that storage. So we're very excited to be invited to their booths to demo, and in some cases we'll be giving talks and so forth. But the main action will be at our booth, of course, at SL 14316. It's off the main aisle towards the back of the hall, and like I said, we look forward to seeing all of you there. Feel free to ask questions via the Q&A mechanism in GoToMeeting. And what we'll be doing over the course of the call is answering those questions online. And in some cases, we will be taking a pause in the presentation to answer the questions verbally. In addition to me and Patrice, Neil is on the call, and all of our phone numbers are here. So feel free to email us or call us if you have questions after the call or would like to set up meetings at NAB. With that, I think I'm going to turn over the presentation to Patrice. Just a moment. All right, Patrice, over to you.
Hello?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. So, first of all, I see that we have already a couple questions coming. Feel free to send them over, and Sam will be sending that to you. Just, I just want to make sure that you can see my screen. Sam?
Yes,
Sam,
I
Neil?
think we can see it now. Yep.
Okay, perfect. So this is here what you see is a simple access via
Oh, hang on a
so
sec. I
simple
think we're.
access via the web browser to the server. Okay, sorry about that, folks. So where was I? Yes. So as you can see here on my screen, I have the web browser where I simply use it to access the server on Axel. We simply provide a web interface. As Sam mentioned, we are sitting on top of your shared storage, watching what is going on and providing you the list of files. We are replicating the folder structures and providing all your assets with the capability to tag them with metadata, annotate them, post comments, and quick login, as well as creating subclips for your NLE. So briefly, let me just go here to my shared storage that I'm currently watching. So as you can see, I'm remotely accessing server HD. And if I go to the shared volume here and the shared catalog, you would see Axel demo and a lot of other subfolders. But what is really where I'm going to access and show you and do the demo for you guys today will be here on the Axel demo. And so you will see folder audio, location shots, movie trailers, MXF, PDFs, pictures, and so on. So let me now log in into Axel. And I will simply access it as demo and land directly to the area that have been mentioned. And here I am. And as you can see, you will see exactly the same folder that we have seen from Finder. So what does it mean is actually you don't need to check in the files or ingest videos or do anything like that via Axel. You can continue to work as you did before. So let's say I'm currently working on a project and I simply go on a project and I create a new folder in there just using Finder. I'm not on Axel, I am using Finder. and I will simply say, webinar project, for example. Here we go. So I have a new folder named webinar project. And when I will refresh my window, I will have now the webinar project right here. And if I go inside, it will be empty. And I can start to populate this, still using only Finder. So let me just bring a new Finder window and just grab a picture right here. I'm going to copy it over to my shared storage. Pretty much like you will continue, like you are probably working today. You know, you have storage, you have folders, you're working on video clips and so on, and you are dropping them via Finder, and then you retrieve them with your video editor tool. We still let you work as you did before. As some like to mention, and I'm surprised he still hasn't done it today, he said that we are competing against post-it notes and stickers that you will have on the different hard drives. And so now I have my new file, the Axel iPad, that is being shown, and I will have shortly the preview that will be shown. So Axel support as well will support videos and pictures and any other kind of stills. You will have PDFs, Illustrator, Photoshop files, and so on. It was actually built on top of an engine that existed a couple of years ago that was doing digital asset management for stills, so professional photographers and the printing. So I'm just dropping a picture now simply because it will be faster rather than rendering a video. But we do render videos either using FFmpeg or using our partner transcoding tool, which will be Telestream. So let me just go inside the video right now. And for example, I will have this shot right here, this little shot. And as you can see, I have now my video player that is being shown. And before I jump to that, actually, let me just very quickly show you around in the interface. We have the search engine here, which is a quick search. You will search on any kind of metadata, the one that you have created or file name. If you click on the lens, you will actually bring the advanced search where you can add multiple fields and filter which fields you want, whether it is by file name, by keywords, or even if you have checkboxes or not, for example, producer approved. And this search result can then be saved. We have only 6 buttons. Let me just go back quickly here. We have 6 buttons, so common buttons that you will see on any kind of, mostly all software. So the refresh, the up arrow for upload, down arrow for download. I have the action gear for that will trigger some actions such as edit metadata. I can share my content, cut, copy, paste files, and so on. I can trigger different views. I have the possibility to jump between the list view or a tiled view. From the list view, I can include more fields to be shown. And finally, I can log out. On the left side, I will have the folder tree, as well as smart filters, which will be pre-installed queries, or it will also be in this area that will find the saved searches. We are also managing multiple tiered storage. So here I have another NAS that I'm using to push high-res clips when I'm done with it. And finally, the bins, which will be where we create the sub clips to be and have XMLs to be exported to NLEs. I'll be jumping into that in a moment. So let me go back to the video here. So I have my video player. I have my video and I can play the video as you can see. And by the way, I'm choosing this video because it has a time code burning here. And that way you will see that actually we are frame accurate. So as you can see, I can jump frame by frame and you will see we are frame accurate. So I can use the arrow keys to jump frame by frame, or I can use the buttons on the video player. We also use the JKL keys, although it is not entirely like you will have on Final Cut Pro, where you will play the video faster or slower or backward. It will simply allow you to jump couple seconds back and forth. And you can also play the video and pause it directly. Uh, you can also have in and out points on the video. And from these in and out points, I can either post a comment or create a subclip. And finally, we have the full screen mode, which will show you that the quality is still relatively good. We are rendering a 500 kilobits per second video, and the quality is still relatively good here. Uh, while we are still, while the proxies are still small enough to be streamed online if you decide to open your server to the internet. So now that I have my in and out points selected right here, as I said, I can post a comment, and let's say, for example, I would say a goal. Let's say that we have the goal here. You can CC this comment that you're posting directly to an email address. And you can also have a comment on a specific frame, as you see here. It is only on the frame. And so you will see that below my video, I start to have different comments with timelines. And so, for example, I can click on it. I can click on it and play the video selection, or I can simply click on the frame to jump to the frame I want with the comments. And so all these comments, basically, they will be kept in the XML that you are going to create for your video editor tools. And we are compatible with Final Cut Pro 7, Final Cut Pro 10, and Adobe Premiere. So this is the annotating part. What I can also do from this from the video I'm viewing is share it. I can share this video via email to someone. It will have an expiration date. I can authorize the person to download the high res or not. And when I hit share, I will have a link which will bring me directly to the video that I've been authorized to see as a guest, and I can see the video. As you can see, I do not have access to anything else. I only see the video that I've been authorized to see as a guest, and I can play the video. Quickly, I can show you that we are using an HTML5 player, so the scrubbing is quite nice compared to Flash player. And I can play the video, pause the video, and so on. And from there, as a guest, I can, of course, post a comment if I want to. So let me exit and come back in as demo and not as a guest. So I've shown you from a video, you can annotate, you can share the video. You can also share multiple videos. If I go, for example, to the folder movie trailer, I can either share this folder or I can share a selection of files. I can share, for example, take these two files, and I can suddenly share these three files if I wanted to. So let me go back here. So we've seen how we have different comments or the interrogation, for example. I jump to the interrogation part and so on. What you can also do is edit the metadata within Excel. So we have couple metadatas. You have little ones that we are simply using for quick approval. So I can simply say yes, no, or maybe, whether or not the file has been approved, and you will see the little icon next to the asset to tell you whether the file has been approved or not. You can also create your own set of metadata that you will then be able to edit, and you can edit as much as you want. We do not limit in the software, but of course it depends then on the it depends on how much you want to be to show to the staff. And so, for example, I will have this project. I will enter today's date, so 03/28. description, and I can enter anything. This is the new trailer for Bond. So while I'm doing it only on one file right now, and you will see that now I have all this information coming. While I'm doing it for one file only, what you can also do is do it on multiple files. Because we do not have the kind of check-in system that you will find in other media asset managements, you will not be able, once the files are picked up and rendered into Excel, you will not be able to enter the metadata. However, so I'm taking like this kind of action movies here. I can select multiple files and then edit the metadata, excuse me, on these files. And for example, I can say action movie trailer. I can change the approval or not, the checkbox. We have a different type of metadata. In addition to the checkbox, you will have a radio button, a pop-up menu, and so on. And once I edit it, so if I go, for example, to the Paranormal Activity 4 trailer here of my player, you will see that I have this description now showing up. So not only you can change the metadata on multiple files, on one file, you can also do it on multiple files. Now let me just go a little bit to the bins here. So for example, if I go to the Olympics and I click on clip 2, you will see that I will play the video with an in and out points here. So you will see a selection of my video. What we do with that in Excel is we are creating pointers to the high res with the in and out points that you will be able then to bring to your NLE. So if you have, for example, a Final Cut Pro 7, Final Cut Pro 7 will then go and find the high-res clips on your shared storage. And then we will provide the in and out points. And if there are any markers, we are also providing them. All the comments that have been posted in Excel will be the comments. So if I take the overlaps here, I have this Bond trailer that I can see. I have multiple comments with in and out points. If I go back, I can play the second clip here with again. So let me just go back to this trailer, and you can do for different assets. You can have multiple assets with the same frame rate and format, and you can then bring everything to a clip. So quickly, let me go back to a Bond, and let me look for actually the explosions here. Here we go. So I can basically go frame by frame, enter my in points, out points, and I will export my subclip. And I'm going to choose a bin, which I can create one on the fly if I have to. But I'm going again to the overlap. And from there, I simply give it a name, the name that I want. And I'm going to call it explosion. Now submit. And all I did was create a pointer. And from this pointer, if I go to the bin overlap right here, you will see that I have a new subclip. And then when I click, you will see that I will play the explosion part, and I have the selection that I've just made for you. So right here on this laptop, I have two NLEs. I have Premiere and I have Final Cut Pro 7. So let me, for example, let me export the clip here with the bin for Final Cut Pro 7 for starter. So I can choose the XML that I want, Final Cut Pro 7.10 or Premiere. And I bring in the XML. I trigger the download. So now remember that my laptop is also connected to my shared storage right here. So as I use my laptop to be my editing station, I need to be also hooked up to the shared storage that is seen by Axel. So now I'll bring the XML right here. And let me go to Final Cut Pro 7. I have my XML that I just downloaded from Axel. Simply drag and drop it into my project that I have. And here I have my overlap, and you will see the 3 clips with all the comments, the interrogation that I showed you earlier. And if I play the clip, the explosion clip right here, you will see that I have my selection. And I play the clip. And so what I need to do now is drop it into my timeline, and I'll be ready. And here I have, and if I take part 1 right here, I will bring it, and so suddenly I have the other part, and now I can get started in my project. And I can do the same thing from another bin into Premiere. So let me go back to, let me grab the Olympics here, and I'll export to Premiere Pro. Again, I have my Olympics clip, go back to Premiere, drag and drop, and it is importing the files right now. So it is looking for the high res directly into the shared storage that I have, and it will, just like for Final Cut Pro 7, it will bring the project. And I have my 4 clips, and just to show you, we also support the audio files. And so I have my clip 2, the Muse, F1 clip, and so on. All the clips that I had here. Just briefly to show you the audio files, we are also rendering quickly. We are rendering the waveform. So I have the waveform here. And so this audio file, so let's say you have wave files for audio effects, or you have MP3 for music and so on, you can bring them into your NLE as well. And so as you can see, I have the in and out points of my audio file, and we'll have the same thing on the clips. So that's pretty much Axel in a nutshell. So you quickly browse your shared storage with Axel. You can create as many metadata as you want, customize one. Uh, we also bring technical metadata. So let me go, for example, to this folder and go to this Niagara movie file. We will bring also the codec, the duration, the aspect ratio, pixel format, and so on. We will bring all of that. So you can actually do a search on frame rate. If you decided to do a search on the video frame rates, let me just find it, up average frame rate, and I decide to look for videos that have 25 frames per second. I can do my search right here, and it will perform the search, and it will find 5 assets with 25 with a frame rate of 25 frames per second. So, and you've seen how I can create subclips, which are in relative pointers that I can then use in my NLE, or video editor station. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Sam and see if we have any unanswered questions or anything that we might need to revisit.
Thanks, Patrice.
And
Yep.
yeah.
So there are a couple of things we haven't gone into depth on here that we can definitely cover, especially if there's interest from the audience. One is that we could show you folks the administrative interface in some detail, which is also browser based. It's really just an extension of the same approach that you've seen for the users. Probably worth taking 5 minutes or so to just quickly walk through the user, the administrator interface. And the other thing that we should probably talk about a bit is our ability to handle non-media files. Patrice alluded to that earlier, but it's actually got a fairly extensive ability to handle things like EPSs, PSDs, PDFs. We even handle multi-page PDFs correctly. Basically, a lot of digital asset management style capabilities that you wouldn't normally expect in a MAM. The reason for that is that this was actually developed on top of a DAM technology stack, and so we have a lot of pretty robust capabilities there, including XMP import, and even selective XMP import, so that you can decide which XMP fields you want to bring in and extend the list in the case of media XMP or things like Dublin Core, for instance. So, you know, the range of assets that Axel can handle is very broad. I would also say that because we don't have an enforced check-in, check-out workflow, that you have the benefit of basically saving whatever you want to your file system. The worst thing that's going to happen is that Axel won't be able to correctly process the file type. And this is true, for instance, for things like DPX files. So Axel won't know what to do with those. And in a folder of DPX files, you'll just see a lot of generic icons and maybe some metadata for each file. But it's not like Axel currently knows how to take all those DPX frames and turn them into a sequence or playable proxy media. But the positive thing is that it doesn't prevent you from checking in those assets into Axel. And we are looking in a future release. We're looking at having a pro version essentially of Axel that will handle some of the more advanced file types, things like OP-Atom for Avid files or DPX files. We're going to be doing a technology preview of the OP-Atom handling at NAB, and we expect to be offering the pro version later this year. But I guess the important point is that for now and really indefinitely, you're free to structure your folders any way you like and save your files into those folders any way you like, regardless of whether Axel is fully capable of handling them or not. And that's quite different from the sort of check in, check out workflow of a traditional MAM. With that, I think I will actually hand it back to Patrice, maybe to
Yeah.
show the admin section.
Yes, definitely. So let me log out and log back in as an administrator. So the one thing that I showed you earlier is I accessed only one folder, which was the Axel demo. So when you create a user in Axel, and I haven't mentioned it, is that you will manage this user like you would on an FTP server. Again, we are trying to keep everything as simple as possible for you guys. So most likely you have created you are using an FTP server when you want to collaborate with customers, and you know that you will create a folder that will be dedicated to this customer, and it will not be able to go above, which is basically what we've done. So if I log in as administrator, I will not have access to I will have access to everything. Let me go to shared catalog. I will have access to everything. So you will see before, as I logged in as demo, I had access to only demo. So now let me log in as administrator right here. And once I get in, you will see that I will have actually everything. And here I am. I have the Axel demo copy, and so on. And if I go, I can expand Axel demo right here. You will see that I have the webinar project folder that I've created for you guys earlier. Now, let me go to the admin pages. The first page you will see will be the user management page. And so administrator has access to everything. Demo is the one that I had done with you. So let me just create a new one, and I'll create a new user named Sam, for example. And from there, I'll simply give it a full name, password, email address, different basic capabilities. Can he share files? Can he access the bins? Can he receive notifications? And since we are using the Axel gear here with Episode Pro, can he transcode the high-res clips? And then I will choose which folder he has access to. And as you can see, I can go on forever. And I can choose any kind of asset that has been cataloged within Axel. So let's say I simply want to give some access to the movie trailer, and that's it. You can only access the movie trailers. You will not see anything else. And then I choose the different capabilities. You can see the previews, but I will not let him download and upload files. All I want is to hear his comments and approve or not, and that's it. You can restrict what the user can do at the end. And something I haven't mentioned to you earlier is that you can choose a different logo for each user. So let's say your customer is Toyota and you're doing the new ad for the Prius. They'd be probably happy to see the Toyota logo. Catalog. So this will be actually the top folder that we are watching within Axel. And so I have different folders. Some of them are local and some of them are on shared storage on the server. But so you can have as many as you want. Bear in mind though that we are talking about one server doing everything. So if you're expecting to have 15 million assets on the Mac Mini, that will be pretty hard on the Mac Mini. But right now, for example, this current Mac Mini that I'm demoing from has about 160,000 assets. And as you can see, it is still pretty fast. Even when I did a search on 25 frames per second, it returned the result in about less than 20 seconds. So we still have a pretty good performances on 160,000 assets. So this is pretty much it for the catalogs part. So very easy. You simply point it to the folder you want and you choose where you want to save the proxies. All my proxies are local here in this case. Now, the data field you can create per catalog. So if you want to have different set of metadata, you can create different catalogs and have different sets. So if I go to shared volume, you will see what I have, and you can create as many as you want. You can even import an XML of a metadata schema. And so if you have, let's say, 20, 40, 50 metadata, and rather than going one by one into Excel, you can simply have an XML and import it. And then you can apply to different catalogs the same schema if you have to. Below, I have a filter, which will be for regular, metadata that you will have in uh, excuse me. So we have another filter with EXIF, IPTC, XMP metadata. That will be useful, especially if you are using Adobe Creative Suite, where you can bring in the Dublin Core metadata that you will have on the videos. Although if you are using a Prelude and you are importing all the XMPs, you will be able to bring a lot of information from Prelude into Excel. Although there is no integration with it. You will have information and you will be able to search on it, but there is no real integration in between Prelude and Excel. The appearance page, some very basic things. We do not have yet the capability to extensively edit the CSS or change anything within the interface. The most common things will be the logo on the login page and the title you will have. So if I say a super webinar that we had this morning, I will save it. When I will change my page, you will see the title on my browser will change. And so like I said, you can have different logos for the login page as well, or the default one. When I get to the advanced, so you can see the title right here. I get to the advanced. As you can see, you can choose the method to render proxies. So I have either Telestream that you can see here. You have also the H.264 that we use FFmpeg. Currently, Firefox uses their own codec, which is the Theora codec for the OGG files when we have HTML5 videos. It is in my understanding that they are going toward H.264, but right now what we do is simply warn users that they can potentially ignore Firefox and just tell their customers. But if you really want to be 100% cross-platform, we do provide you the possibility to render OGG files, which would double the time and space taken. Oh, the sweep option will be the sweep option would be how many times do we go through the file system to make sure that the database is up to date. So we have different fallback plans. So we should detect everything that happened using FS events, but there are some exceptions where you have a SAN where you will not want to have FS events detect and so on. So you can then create a loop where how many times do I check the system to make sure that there are no new files or files have been deleted. The status, it will purely be how many transcodes are left and how many are being done right now. And by the way, you have also in the client interface some progress bar to see where we are. I can show you one briefly later on. We have the transcode here. So again, these are tasks that have been created in the episode that I'm bringing in. And from there I can then create high-res clips. Just for speed's sake, I will not show you, but you can see that you have a different format, wrapper, the codecs, bitrate, and so on. Very easy to disable or enable coders. And finally, you have the logs per user where you will see everything that I have done from there. You know, the approved yes, the comments that I have posted, and so on. So each user, you will have the action of each user. You can filter by date, you can filter by action, and by location. So let me just show you this notification center that I haven't gone through in details here. So you see I have a little check mark to tell me that everything is good, everything is done. So if I decide to render a high-res clip, I will see the progress bar right here. And so I will have one task being performed. If I render a proxy, and that's pretty neat, if I clear the cache right here to re-render this file, it will uh, it will show me the progress being done right here as well. So I have the watch icon. It's telling me that it is currently processing the file. And so now I have the one task being processed and I have the progress bar here. So wherever I am, I will be able to know where I am in the transcoding process. Or if I go back to the shared volume, I will see the progress bar as well in the I will see the progress bar under the thumbnail. Uh, I see there are a lot of questions coming in. So, uh, if there is anything I can cover, Sam, that may help you answer some questions, Sam.
Yep. So we've been yeah, a ton of questions. Thanks for. I mean, we're up to like 20 plus questions from the audience. So I've just been jamming away answering those. There have been a number of questions about archive and nearline workflows, and we're not the current version of Axle that's shipping does not have archiving built into it. We have been in beta with some archiving functionality, and we do plan to release that at NAB. I'm just wondering if there's any of that that you'd want to show, Patrice. And
Let
this
me
is a bit
see
of
what I
a
can do.
preview, but we can kind of give you a feel for how it works. And
Mhm.
generally, we're trying to keep the archiving workflow as simple as some of the other stuff you've been seeing. So the kinds of questions. There was one question about integrating with Front Porch, which we don't currently do. Essentially, what Axle does today is it'll integrate with any archive that looks like a file system. We are working on some API integrations with folks like Cache and Storage DNA. Those aren't yet shipping, but they're coming along. We have not yet started any work on Front Porch integration, but by far the simplest way to do archiving in Axle is literally to have it look like a file system. And that can be accomplished two ways. You can have tiered storage systems like Zendata, which have a combination of disk and tape but look like one big file system. And the other way is just to think about doing very low cost NAS. We just made an announcement with this company, QNAP from Taiwan. You can basically build out a 30 terabyte NAS for $5,000 or $6,000, and using those as kind of large capacity nearline storage systems is not a far-fetched thing at all. So with a combination of disk-based nearline and then HSM style tape and disk, um, our feeling is that we have a good range of solutions right now, some of which we'll be showing at NAB with our partners. But in the future, we do expect to do more API style integrations. So with that, maybe Patrice, I can hand it over to you to show the archiving.
Mhm. So, um, basically, you will set up where you will have the parking area if you want. And that will also be in the admin pages. Once this is set up, you can choose which user can archive or not. And so you will see on the left side the archiving here with the nice typo, SART archive instead of shared archive. So I have my archive. Again, for speed's sake, I'm going to keep it very simple. I'm going to the PDF file right here if it has not been archived. And so there are different ways you can select the file that you want to archive and then send them to the archive, or you can drag and drop files. Something I haven't shown you is we have drag and drop here, where you can move files around into Excel or bring them to the archive or add them to bins directly. So let me just archive this file. And so what will happen is we will send them into a queue system. This queue system will then do the copy in the background. And so we will copy from one location to another. And there will be a status that will tell you when the copy is done. Just waiting for the status to be shown. Just a moment. Let me just jump servers here. So let me take, for example, this 23 megabyte video. So I have the archive that I have set up right here. Simply drag and dropping. And so now I have triggered the copy. And once this is done, once this sign is telling, when this sign disappear, it's just a placeholder. It will not be the final icon if everybody is horrified by it. Sorry, like Sam said, it's a beta. So, so once this status is gone, we know the copy has been done, and we can then choose this file and say delete it from the high res. And from there, so I'm just waiting for the copy to be over. Let me quickly show you on my file system. Right now, I am locally on my laptop, and so if I go to the Excel archive, you will see how we are going to organize it. Let me retrieve it. Is it this one? I think it is this one. History. We are the 28th, so it is coming. Yeah, it is. So as you can see, I have the copy, and what I have from the copy will be the full clip, the low-res proxy, the thumbnail, and the XML, where we have all the information from the video, which will also include the comments in Excel as well as the customized metadata that have been set. And so once this clip has been gone, this icon, I'm sorry, is gone to tell me that the copy is over. I can simply delete the high res. And what will happen in that case is, as you can see, I have a darker triangle here. You may not see it. Let me archive this one as well because the triangle will be shown at the same time. And so you will see the difference. So you see I have a light gray here to tell me that the file is processed and copied. And the dark gray means that this file is offline. And so basically, if I go to the movie trailers, so let me go back to my shared folder right here, the demo movie trailers. If I look at the Jesus and Crossed trailer here, you will see that now it is 0 bytes. I only have a placeholder. And so this is how I would actually keep free up space, if you want, in my main storage, in the first tiered storage, which will be most likely the production SAN. Now, let's say I decide to retrieve it. So I have, looking for uncrossed, and I'm looking for this file. I found this file, I'm looking at it. Now I simply need to retrieve this file. I can then trigger the restore. And from there, as you can see, I'm starting the copy again where the file is being restored. And it should not take too long because it's 20 megabytes. So let me go to, again, the Axel demo, movie trailers, and I have Jesus and Cross. And as you can see, I have the 23.5 megabytes and the movie is back into my main storage. And hopefully I have answered the questions here. Uh, I still see the questions flying. Thank you very much, guys. That's great to see a lot of interest from you.
So I'm rejoining the call. Yes, I've been typing away answering these questions. Um, let's see, we've had a number of questions about the Avid support. So we will be doing this technology preview at NAB, and we hope to ship sometime after that. We are also looking for beta sites for the Avid support, and in general, we're looking for folks that want to catalog, ISIS or possibly other storage systems with Avid Media. But one of the things is the first release of our Avid stuff will not have sort of native sequence handling. So you won't be able to just check in a sequence and have Axel automatically parse that and figure out all the related assets or anything. It's going to be fairly simple, similar to the workflow that we have right now for Final Cut and for Premiere, where essentially you're browsing through the assets. The difference will be that they can be native MXF OP Atom assets, and Axel will correctly group those into master clips. So instead of seeing one asset for each audio track, for instance, you would see one consolidated asset for both the video and the audio, and displaying correctly that way. So it'll be quite useful for cataloging a bunch of incoming or work in progress MXF media. And it'll also have the same kind of editor export functionality that we have now for Final Cut and Premiere, except that instead of exporting an XML, it'll push out an AAF file that will have links to all the appropriate media. So it's a fairly simple kind of 2 or 3 step workflow. The nice thing is that the proxy viewing from remote locations will work the same way. So we'll be creating streamable browser-based H.264 proxies for native Avid assets at very low cost. It won't, and by the way, it'll be somewhat more expensive than the current base system, but still much less expensive than the systems that have traditionally been used for that kind of work. So again, we're looking for beta sites and in particular folks that have sort of straightforward search requirements and collaboration requirements around pools of Avid media. Um, I think at this point, it's we're going to probably just read the questions and answer them because keeping up with the typing is not practical at this point. Does archiving only archive the file from Axel? Does it stay in the original location on the file storage? That's a question from Anna File. Um, it does not stay. Well, here's the point: when you do the archiving, the original file stays where it is, and a copy is created on the archive system. In fact, what Axel does is it creates a folder there that contains the high res media, the low res proxy, a copy of the XML sidecar file that's essentially a snapshot of what is in the database at the time of archiving. We use PostgreSQL for the database. And then finally, a thumbnail of the file. So those four things get placed in a named folder in the archive. And the name of the folder is pretty much the asset name, the archive date, so it's easily searchable later. Um, Once it's done all that, though, it doesn't delete anything from the high res storage. That needs to be done manually at the discretion of the administrator. But they can go through and depopulate those high reses. And what will happen is that the indicator, the triangle indicator, will show that the file has been deleted. But you can click on that triangle to bring back that file from the archive at any point. So that's pretty much the workflow. Hope that explains it. We decided not to do a delete from the file system for a couple of reasons. One is that we wanted to maintain this notion that Axel is not going to be able to do any harm to your file system. And obviously, if you're able to do a lot of deletes, that creates a level of kind of responsibility both for our software and for the administrators that we felt was kind of different from the design approach of the rest of the system right now. The second reason is that it really felt like something which folks are comfortable doing in the file system today anyway. And so by leaving it that way, we were probably accomplishing a positive thing on several fronts. Um, Okay, another question from Matt Bear. When you archived and deleted the file from high-res, did you also take the proxy offline, or does that still exist to preview? Yes, the proxy and the metadata stay online. So essentially, it remains an entry in the database. The thumbnail is there. The proxy is there. So out of the four, let's say, flavors of the asset that I described before, the only one that gets deleted from the work in progress storage is the high-res. Question from Kent Peterson. Will there be a way to only bring back the low resolution file, not the high res, or just back up the high resolution? Good question. Right now, we don't have a way to bring back the low res, but as I just mentioned, we don't delete the low res either. So that sticks around, and the asset remains visible and searchable as well as browsable. So we haven't yet felt the need to figure out a way to bring back the low res. Of course, you could always do something manually. And then, or just back up the high resolution. That's not an option that we support right now, but it is perfectly valid once we've archived out the folder full of stuff. You could go through those and by hand, of course, delete the proxies and the XMLs. The thing is, they represent such a small percentage of the storage, typically around 1%. If you've got a 50 megabit HD, let's say XDCAM or something, DVC Pro, our proxies are only 500 kilobit per second H.264. So, the ratio of 500 kilobit to 50 megabits, about 100 to 1. And then the XML file is really negligible in size. So the question is, between those and the thumbnail, maybe, I don't know, 1.5% of the total storage would be taken up by these extra files. But what's nice about them is that they make the archive kind of self-readable. In other words, if you were to write to an LTFS tape and then copy that tape or transport it somewhere else, somebody at the receiving end would have all the metadata, proxies all ready to go. So our feeling was, geez, for 1.5% of the storage, that's kind of well worth it in terms of the openness and the readability of the resulting archives. We hope that makes sense. In the future, if there's a lot of demand for just archiving the high res, we could easily do that. Another question from Matt. Are there any plans to add an auto archiving feature that would be able to move media within a certain metadata set that is 30 days old, for example? That's a good question, and actually a great feature request. We've had a number of requests for sort of action triggers based off metadata. I know Final Cut Server had that feature, and it's something that people really liked about it. So it's something we're discussing, but we don't have any fixed plans for putting that into the roadmap. And finally, from Kent, does the file have to be closed before you start viewing? It does not. So the high-res file can be open. But when you say closed, I assume you mean completed, as in, ingest, sort of read while ingest kind of applications. We don't yet have a way to create proxies from files that are still being ingested. That's a very strong feature request and something that we're looking at for the future. But right now, we really only start creating the proxies at the time or after the time that the file has been completely saved. So this right now, Axel is not appropriate for kind of on-air broadcast applications where you've got news feeds coming in and you want to go live to air. That kind of stuff is really beyond the scope of the product. Um, Another question from Peter. These are fantastic questions, by the way. So we really appreciate it. From Peter Van Velzen, can you do a forced or timed bidirectional consolidation sync between the file system and Axel DB? There is no way to force one, but we do have a sweep function that you can set for a specific time interval, and that will essentially go through and make sure that what's in the database is fully up to date against the file system. So we have that, but there isn't an easy way to just sort of force that. There is a on the status page you can kind of restart the cataloging, and that will have something like this capability. Um, Question from Joel Gilbert: how does the licensing work? Is it tied to an individual machine ID? The answer is the server application itself is yes, tied to an individual machine ID. We use the MAC ID as well as a number of other system parameters to create the license. Obviously, on the client side, though, it's not tied to any machine at all. We just detect named users. So it's probably we're taking a couple of minutes on this. Many media asset management systems are licensed on concurrent users, uh, which means that essentially number of people logged in will determine your need for a license. We do a slightly different approach, which is named users. That is within the administrative section that Patrice was showing. You can set up any number of users. And by the way, there are some loopholes that we almost encourage. For instance, you could have one user called public. We have a number of customers doing this right now. So they have an open HTTPS gateway out into the internet. They're actually letting people come in and browse and then giving them limited privileges. So, let's say you can only search, maybe post comments, and maybe download of specific folders. You can create a username called public, and no matter how many people log in on it, that still counts as one user. Where the number of users really start to matter, though, is in the collaborative applications where people are posting comments, where they're changing metadata and so forth, and you really want to know who did what. Obviously, there the user count is quite important, and so it's done in 5 user blocks. But again, between the ability to support several people logging in under one username, and then also the ability to do kind of temporary or guest users. There's a lot of flexibility in the system, and in general, we find the licensing system works well for people. But on the server end, it's tied to one machine, and that, by the way, that machine needs to be running just plain OS 10.8 Mountain Lion rather than Mountain Lion Server. Um, it's a little counterintuitive. People say, "Why don't you use server?" The answer is that server locks down some of the Apache settings in ways that actually make it harder to configure Axel, and very difficult to do things like, for instance, map the proxy volumes to larger storage systems. So when people ask us about running it on OS 10 server, we just tell them to uninstall the server part, and they'll be fine. Um, Question from Darren Dunbar: can the database be easily backed up for disaster recovery purposes? Suppose the hard disk in my Mac Mini died. Very good question. So because we use Postgres, which is a very widely supported, open standard SQL database, there are a number of good strategies for backing it up and doing snapshots and things. It's really an IT question as to how you choose to do that. But there's everything from retrospect to rsync and other options as well. So we typically leave that up to the individual site administrator to decide how they want to back it up. But backing up the database is a very good idea. Now there is some resiliency built into Axel in that every time it writes a record to the database, it also updates a sidecar XML file for that asset, and so they're paired up throughout the file system. And if necessary, if the database crashes or is corrupted, we can rebuild that database from those sidecar XML files. And they even include things like the timeline comments and so forth. But that's kind of a worst case scenario. And we really don't encourage people to do it, obviously. There are some nice aspects to that, though. This new XML import export tool that we've developed lets you do things like maintain some level of synchronization between Axel systems at a distance, in that you could, for instance, take the recently edited XMLs from one location, FTP them or send them in some way to the other location, and then bring those in to update files that have been cataloged in both locations. But we haven't built the tool sets for doing that. All we have is kind of the raw import export tool. And it does do, for instance, scanning of an ingest volume for new XMLs, so that as you write the XMLs to the second system, it could import them. The main use of that is one-time imports right now of things like legacy Final Cut server databases. Okay, I think we've caught up with all the questions. And oh, one more just came in. And then there was one that I wanted to answer from earlier, which was about the NAB show. So one person had asked, what is the list of partners that we have at the show? And so for that, I think what I'll do is I'll take back the presenter mode and just bring up the PowerPoint slide that I showed earlier, which was all of the booth locations, and we can just talk a little bit about the partners. And that should pretty much take us to the end of the 90 minutes. So thanks everybody for not only hanging in there but asking some fantastic. I think this sets a new record actually for the quantity and quality of questions at one of our webinars. So we really appreciate that. All right, let me just make sure my screen sharing is on. Yeah, okay. So basically, this map shows, and I'll just bring it into full screen view. This map shows the partners that will be exhibiting Axel in their booths at NAB, as well as our own booth in the lower right. There's actually one partner that isn't on this map, which is IBM. They're in the North Hall, and you know, obviously we couldn't fit everything onto this one map, but we thought it would be good for the purposes of discussion. With IBM, we're going to be showing a technology demo with their LTFS hierarchical file system. The LTF, we've done some testing with LTFS LE, which is the version that actually spans multiple tapes. But at the IBM booth, I don't believe there's going to be an actual demo. It's more, discussion and presentation materials. Whereas in the South Hall, essentially all of these vendors, with the exception of Atto, will be doing demos in their booths. I can probably approach it from left to right and just talk very briefly about each. So with Telestream, I think we've already talked about the Telestream integration. We're able to use Telestream not only to generate proxies in Axel, but also to generate derivatives of assets that are stored in Axel. And this is done from the bins, essentially. So you can take subclips and then export those subclips or clips through Telestream. Small Tree does some very nice NAS solutions for high-speed editing. So NAS has been getting more and more powerful in the last few years for editing applications. And they have some really cool stuff in conjunction with Axel. We have some customers together, and that solution works very well. Facilis is one of the longtime leaders in SAN storage. They do really fantastic terablock SANs. And they've also come out in the last year or so with some tiered storage stuff. So they actually have something called Sync Block, which is a second tier of storage, as well as LTO tape archiving capabilities. And we'll be showing Axel with them in their booth. QNAP is the low-cost NAS vendor that I mentioned in answering one of the questions. They do very inexpensive network-attached storage, not really appropriate for live editing work, but very good for nearline. Then moving across, DDP is an interesting SAN vendor from Europe. They not only have the standard disk-based SANs that you would expect, they also have very interesting small SSD SANs that are used for field applications. So this is like a little 1U box, goes really nicely with our Axel Gear 1U box, actually. So you could do, like, in a tiny rack mount, everything you would need for field editing and media management. Worth a look. ArchiWare does archiving storage software, browser-based. And there's a nice YouTube video that Mike Zumlinski has done showing how to integrate ArchiWare with Axel. Tools on Air does a variety of ingest and playout tools for Mac OS, and they've done some early integration with Axel. Max Digital in the upper right does shared storage systems using largely standard network technology, but with some surprisingly good performance and quite low cost. Zendata has done an integration with Axle that we'll be showing. And in addition, we have a three-way integration with NL Tech where we couple in interplay systems. This is very useful for migrating MXF media off of Interplay. I did mention a couple times that we don't yet have native Avid support, but what the Zendata NL Tech integration does is actually flattens out those MXF OP atoms into H.264 proxies that Axel can handle, and then we catalog those and do all of our usual database functions on the back end. So that's kind of an early example of Avid integration in an Axel environment. EMC Isilon, we're going to be showing a joint demo with MXF Server. They have a very cool editing system that lets you kind of create projects for people, whether in Final Cut, Premiere, or Avid. And what we've been able to do is use Axel as the kind of pre-searching and pre-selecting tool to drop things into MXF Server, much like we do with the bins going out to Premiere and Final Cut. Atto does a variety of Thunderbolt import and export boxes. So you can go Thunderbolt to Fiber Channel, Thunderbolt to 10 gig E, and they won't have a demo in their booth, but they will be able to talk to you very specifically about a lot of cool network options. And then finally, GB Labs is a British, as the name implies, a British NAS. They've been able to get some really impressive, very high bandwidth performance out of NAS. They're able to do 4K on a NAS, which is something I have not seen before. And finally, One Beyond is a company based here in Boston. They have a small appliance that they've actually embedded Axle into. So it's like lunchbox size, and it includes Axle, LTFS, and an LTO tape, so that you're able to take it out in a field application, catalog media, and archive in kind of one very affordable compact box. So that was kind of a marathon rundown of our partners at the show, but hopefully it gives you an idea of the kind of uses that you can put a technology like this to. I think that the key is in the past, when media asset management was big and expensive, you really couldn't think about a lunchbox device that included media asset management. And you couldn't think about, like in the case of DDP, a small SSD storage system with real HD editing capabilities and media asset management that would be portable. So Axel is giving you those kinds of very grassroots applications, and then also some bigger ones like the EMC and Zendata ones, which really extend up into the enterprise. But it's worth mentioning that this is not an enterprise MAM, right? We recommend you use it for up to 50 users, currently up to about 150,000 assets. Now, that's a lot more assets than we were able to handle last year, and that number will keep progressing as we optimize the system. But it's not in the millions of assets, and this isn't going to replace any large broadcasters' main MAM system anytime soon. It's really designed for the work group, for review and approval, for ingest, and for selection of material prior to editing. And if you keep that in mind and don't get too carried away with the applications, what we find is that it's really uniquely straightforward and powerful in those uses. So I think we're at this point we're pretty well at the end of our 90 minutes. There have been a few more questions that have trickled in, so we'll be happy to answer those. And you know what I will do? Let me just bring up that last slide with our contact info. So if there are additional questions, whoops, that went away. If there are additional questions stemming from this, all three of us really like to make ourselves available and at any time. So just email us or text or call us with questions. And again, we really look forward to meeting you all at NAB. Thanks for joining.